Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Pleasure Pulse. I'm your host, Roma Richardson, and I'm so excited that you have joined me for another conversation about sex, but also about dating. So we have been talking about dating for a while now. I think we've had 2 shows on dating, so this is our 3rd, and we thought it was really important to have a man come on the show because it was me and another girl, and we were just talking just about like our own perspectives on dating. And of course, we know that we are missing lots of other perspectives, and so we wanted to at least have one more voice to chime in on the conversation. But as usual, before we get into tonight's discussion, I'll take a break so that you can let everybody know that Pleasure Pulse is live. So stay tuned, and we will come right back and get into tonight's conversation. Welcome back to Pleasure Pulse. I'm your host, Roma Richardson, and you are tuned in to ZIZ on Facebook, on YouTube, and on radio. And I'm so happy that you have joined me and my guests for another conversation tonight. And tonight we are continuing that discussion on dating. And I wish my other guest, who's been a kind of staple for the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know, for the last 2 shows ago, was able to be here, but we are going to jump into tonight's conversation, just the 2 of us, for this time. And maybe there's going to be another time where the 3 of us can really argue.
Yeah, man, I really hope so. I come back already. I come back already.
To do it. Okay, so
yes.
before we get into the discussion, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. First and foremost, blessed night to everybody who's listening. My name is Daud Byron. You probably know me from TikTok or from Rastwood Breakfast Delights, where we specialize in breakfast meals, such as the waffle sandwich, waffle burger, bun and saltfish. So if you want to make any orders, call us at 767-2050. Opening hours 7:30 to 10:30, Monday to Friday, 7:30 to 11:30 on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I also asked you on the show because I know you have been very vocal. You have your own program. You had a couple of shows,
Yes.
and you have been vocal about lots of different things. You talk from a man's perspective as well. So I wanted you to come sit down, not to put you in the hot seat, but just so that we could I have my water. So that we could have that perspective in the hopes of having a balanced discussion.
Yes.
And I'm also looking forward to it because I have a theory that everyone in the dating pool is experiencing similar things, even though we like to talk about, women's experiences this and men's experiences that. But let's see what happens in the conversation.
Yes.
So you are single.
Yes.
Tell me about what it's like to be single as a man.
Right now it's very calm. It's very calm. It's very quiet. And when I say quiet, I mean you get a point at life where it becomes repetitive in terms of like the whole dating scheme. But now it gone up to a different kind of level in terms of like what you have to bring, comparing to, and I'm sure you experience this, like within the decade, you see a kind of drastic shift in the terms of the demand of relationship versus what you have to bring into the relationship. And I find that a lot of men are struggling with that because some of you women have some very, very high expectation of a man's supposed to be or what a man's supposed to give in the relationship. And a lot of people need to come down to reality. And I feel that right now is the main problem in the relationships. There's too many superficial, requirements for you to say, well, I want to be in this relationship.
When you say superficial requirements, what do you mean?
Meaning, like, I'm going to use the economy, for example. You know, some people have this kind of way where if you can accommodate this type of lifestyle, financially, you can't afford to be with me. And in most cases right now, there are a lot of unemployed persons, mostly men, because it's rather difficult for certain jobs to be to receive. You know, there's not a lot of local businesses that could hire people at the moment right now. So you find that most of us have to, well, I won't say us, but on the more, they will have to settle for low-income jobs, and it's like the stipulations with the women is just very high. You can't speak to me unless you could carry me on a date. I'm gonna cost over $300 to $400.
ECRUS. Both sometimes.
Pound sterling. So it's like you have to go in with that in your head every single time you speak to a woman, because from the looking on the outside on what they're into or what they believe in, because a lot of people like to say social media is not a huge influence in their life. It is the everyday influence right now. You know, even from my part too, because certain things what I would hear from social media would resonate to the kind of mindset I have right now. So more times when I see certain posts on Instagram or whatever social media platform, it's all about if a man don't have his thing together, I'm not gonna fix it. Right now it's Bob the Builder, man, building a man, but you ain't got a foundation to even lay on for the man to build anything. But the man's supposed to come with the building done, constructed, everything, and then in return, he just have to like, yeah.
And in return, the princess takes an happiness.
Then, well, I wouldn't even say princess, baby. It's like a high dress, like a high color dress princess, but like in terms of mentality, no.
Okay, so you think a lot of things have been like whittled down to economics, and that, well, you're saying no, you know, women's standards, some women's standards tend to be based on our expectations, tend to be based mostly on financial, you know, contributions.
That's most of the conversation.
So what does, you know, because I've seen men ask a lot, what do you bring to the table? What is that? What are men's expectations from women? If those are women's expectations of men, what are men's expectations of women? No, you would say.
Okay, before I answer that question, I want to know, okay, if you have to summarize one word of how you see men or how you view men, what would it be?
Multifaceted.
Multifaceted.
Yeah.
And is it by choice or is by design? Because
by choice, well,
no, it cannot be by choice, because if it was by choice, then a man could sit down at home and post, I'm feeling depressed, I need somebody to talk to me, I need to go outside. What women don't understand is that men have to build their wealth, their worth. Most women who are, especially when they have like beautiful women, are born with that advantage. Because, like I said, by design, the men have to do these things to acquire the woman and maintain the woman. So if the woman mindset is, this man has to be working extra hard, this man has to have all these things covered, he must be able to accommodate my everyday needs, he's supposed to give me his undivided attention, even though he work in 5, 6 different jobs, he got about 10, maybe like 8 companies, dealing with 500 plus people, and you want that man to prioritize, take with all of that and prioritize all his time just for you.
I'm so confused about how we got to this, because we were talking about you said that there
No,
are
I'm
a
just
lot
breaking
of,
down.
I understand
Yeah.
that, right? But you talked about reality, right? Like that isn't the reality
Yes,
for
that's
most men in
exactly.
saying kids, right? So I'm a little so I guess I'm like, what is it? Because it's also like you talked about, and I think it was a slip of the tongue when you said, building your worth and building your wealth. And I'm thinking about it like women, you say, and lots of people said so it's not just you, that women are critiqued now for being perceived to be more materialistic, more focused on finances and so on. But isn't that also where a lot of men are? So, and that's the thing that I think about, right? Like all of us existing under this system, right? This capitalist system where your worth is tied to your wealth and what you have and what you can contribute. We are living in societies that still, even though, the reality is that men occupy some or can occupy some low income jobs, or that they might even be unemployed. The reality is that most people, of all genders, can afford to live on their own or just like by themselves. So everybody is struggling. Let me not say everybody. Some people ain't struggling and they should give up. But anyways, a lot of people are struggling.
Yes.
No. But the way that we have been socialized is to see men as protectors, but mostly to see men as providers. So it's like now you have women being like, okay, society say you're a provider, so provide. Okay. So why do women get critiqued for buying into that? Ain't nothing new that they created.
No, it isn't nothing new, but it becomes where you have to do things beyond like the whole process of dating. So what I'm saying is like you find that most of the women are attracted to
you mean
the
like
the high value men, and it is very small. In
okay, you mean like on the first date, people are like, "What can you do for me?" Or even before you could get to the point of a first date, people are like, "What can you do for me?"
What can you do for me? Yeah, and sometimes it becomes subliminal. Like for example, like me and you just started to talk, and we're getting acquainted with each other. And then off the top, you say something like, I'm hungry, hungry, and I feel like I want this and that, this and that.
Something expensive.
Not well. In few cases, some might test you and say, I might want some KFC. Okay, you say, well, okay, no problem. I'll buy the KFC. Boom. Then, as you get more in tune with each other, then the stakes start to get higher, I see a dress there I wanted, but it costs $175. I went by the bank and
I can't do with you.
I went by the bank and, boss say, pay me the money. You think you could give me, you could buy it for me, and then whenever I get a chance, I will give you back? No, this here is a loaded question now to a man, because it could go two ways. I could say, okay, then in my mind I tell you, no, you owe me. So in the back of my head, if I bring that to you, I could slim down my chances, because in her head she might look at it like, he really asking back for this money, man? And on the other hand, no, you could just say, it's okay. Really? Yeah, it's okay. You can have that. So in that two instances, you already done spend $400, maybe $200, and we just talking. Me ain't get to see you physically, So I down bad 200.
So what happened to that? What happened to just talking? Like, tell me what is. Let's get to the core of the issue, because some people might not see a problem in that. If you're talking to someone who wants to be a provider for you, is there a point at which
I-
that clicks in, or can they be a provider for the whole conversation, the whole duration of your
I guess,
engagement?
and that is where conversations are very important. And I find like a lot of men realize that the conversation is kind of one base. You know, there's a lack of personality right now for my part. What I'm seeing there's a serious lack of personality. Like, what makes you different than any other woman who wears makeup, who put on a different type of hairstyle every week, you know, who speaks about, you know, getting this bag and being as you call it, independent woman. You know, those kind of conversations are very repetitive. So it's like everybody out here is a sheep, but who gonna be the black sheep? Who gonna stand out? What makes you stand out for make me to say, well, I want to be with you in this relationship?
Do you have to stand out? Or can't you just be who you are,
Well, you could
whoever
be-
you are?
Yeah, you could be whoever you are, but that's the point. The point is, it's like
It's not clear who
It's not.
they are.
no, it's not. Like you can't pinpoint what they really are, or to say, well, okay, this part of you, I hold it significantly dear to me. You know, like for my
Like, I
part,
find you are very kind and so.
or
okay.
very humorous, or whatever the case may be. Because some men like certain type of women. Some men like the woman to make them laugh. Some like the woman to be very aggressive. Some like the woman to be very career-driven. Whatever the case may be. So it's like, it's the same with women too, I would assume. They want a certain type of man so they don't have to go through the struggle of pushing that man to be that man itself. Versus the man will accept the woman for what she is and help build her into the woman she can become. So it's like we still gain all the work and you gain it's like we do a group homework and I do all the homework.
But I've heard so many examples of like women being there for men, building men, to take and take through all the struggle, whatever, and then at the end he go off and find somebody else. There's like all these stories about women who have invested time, who have, you know, foregone their own needs and desires and careers and so to invest in their partner's career, and then next thing they turn around and they go marry somebody else. So like, is it about human nature? Is it about how we socialize? At me,
But it's really based on the individuals.
Yeah.
Like certain things you just can't control. And I feel like maybe in St. Kitts is a very small place. So you find that people get more attracted to people the more they see them. So that's why you see like a lot of relationships have other relationships in at this present moment, you know. So for my sake, I would tell myself, if I go date this person, if I find out who the background be, at some point you're gonna be a clash where they either went with somebody that I know personally, or they went with somebody I don't like, you know. So is either you're gonna accept it as is and not question it, or if you do question it, that will just make you not want to be in a relationship with anybody.
that's interesting that you bring that up, because when we first talked about dating, I think one of the questions was like the realities of dating in a small society. You know, considering the reality is that we live in a small place and we might have, you know, had relationships with the same person or whatever. What advice would you give to someone who has found themselves
In that situation,
in that situation?
well, I can speak from experience. You know, well, for one, I believe time is very important. And when I mean time, I mean like how long but this person and that person who's your friend were in a relationship or were dating or whatever the case may be. I think it's time, and also the type of relationship they have still, if it's close,
Okay.
or if it's not there at all, or it's just like, you know, a high and by situation. And if, you know, the type of interaction you had with that person, throughout that time. You might not even know that he, this person was with the one that you're into. In that case, you might meet them maybe on 1, 2 occasions, and then they break off, and then time just pass. So it all depends on how you see it.
Yeah.
Because attraction is something that you can't really avoid, but adding those instances or adding that type of information could kind of like hinder you from wanting to be with somebody, especially like if the person came to you about that same person and complain about the relationship, the type of person they are, you know, the kind of behavior, the qualities, or the lack of. So that could also kind of deter you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say it's all on you, to be honest. However you absorb the information and process it, then you just make the best decision for your happiness or for your peace of mind.
I saw it online some time ago, and also, you know, I've read research about the loneliness epidemic, especially among men. And so when you're talking about men being single, it sounds like a choice. But it sounds like a choice, like they're choosing to be single.
Well, to avoid
right, they're
for them
choosing to be
become
single
suicidal,
because
yes.
that's the easier
Yes. It's very easier because
option right now.
yeah, because men take things too hard. A lot men really take.
So you
things,
mean men are the emotional ones?
I mean, we're all emotional beings.
Okay.
But when you say
said
emotional, I mean, we don't. Okay, if we allow emotions to take over, it's going to be very dangerous.
Well, yeah, everybody knows that.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, so we don't even have to get into that.
Yes.
But I think, I mean, like.
But women are very dangerous too, and they understand the dangers that they put themselves into.
We're talking about.
Oh, let me hear about that one there now.
We're talking about how that loneliness epidemic. So that, you know, is people who are not necessarily single by choice, but people who are having a difficult time finding a match. How would you describe the dating pool right now? The pool, so everybody who is in it.
I would say for the dating pool right now, it is very.
Are you in the dating pool, or are you like choosing to be single and you're okay with that right now?
Choosing to be single.
Okay.
And yeah, because I find like I don't really have the time and effort for it because I got so much on my plate dealing with business.
That's fair.
You know, and to add someone who doesn't have their life together, they're not.
So is that what? Let you finish. Is that what the dating pool is, though? Because you don't have to add someone who doesn't have their life together.
That's true, but I mean, in saying it's a lot. It's a lot. You can see like there are a lot of women who are really settled down mentally. You know, they're very loud, rambunctious, you know, sometimes always in your face, very demanding, you know, very quick with their mouth. So, you know, that comes with a lot of attitude, a lot of negligence, you know, a lot of disrespect. And I find that women play a better war psychologically than men because they understand their power and especially the type of words that you project or you put towards a man could hurt him or it could help elevate him. Because if a man put his time and investment or his love for you, anything that you say or do could alter the type of mind he going into the next day. Because the devotion to you is so solid. It's like you could just get up one morning and you're in a bad mood, and he come up and you wake up in a good mood, and he said, good morning, baby. And you're just like, shut up, I can't take her now. The energy change because we absorb so much of your energy, right? That we ain't had no choice but to turn into the negative, and then that day will charge you whole day. Because you probably have something planned in your mind, and through the kind of frustration you put towards him, he has to walk with that and still go into the day, and another set of frustration come on now. And then he messed up. But he's still thinking about what you said because you are the first person who he spoke to for the day. So you have the ultimate decision to either make his life feel good today or bad today.
And you would say it's also the same for the women.
It's also the same thing.
But you're just giving me the man's perspective.
Yes.
That's fair. I find it really interesting. I think Kititians, I don't know about Nivisions, really. I don't think. Nivisions generally are very nice.
Very
nice people.
Very nice
Kititians are very rough. So it's not even necessarily specific to women. I think we maybe notice it in women a lot because it's so oppositional to who we believe they should be. You know, we think women should be soft and gentle and all of these things. So when you see roughness in a woman, like, it kind of surprises you because it's like that's not typically associated with women. But I find Kititians are generally very rough.
Yeah.
And I suppose because you seem like not rough.
I could be.
You could, okay.
I can be. I can be.
Okay.
But you see, the thing is, I have to be rough because how the society is.
People around you rough.
Rough,
So it's
yeah.
like, if I don't be rough with you, you're going to think that you don't have to take me seriously. You think you could do anything you want to me and so on. So my thoughts are, this is obviously not working, right? Like the roughness, the aggression and so on, obviously not working because we're talking about, you know, being there for your partner in different ways, including being in support of their spiritual, mental, holistic well-being, being someone who can be a rainbow in their clothes and not the clothes in their rainbow.
Okay.
So it's like, do you think other men think like that, or do you think, when I watch people in their relationships too, when I watch the things that people say to each other, or listen to the things that people say to each other, how they interact with each other, whether that's public, as in right in front of you, whether it's on social media, whether you're in the house and you see them abuse or whatever, like, we think abusing is a normal part of relationships, and that in an indicator of, you know, relationships health or not. I mean, say me abusing, like play abusing, I mean abusing, like, oh wait, and yeah, and like, you know, your neighbors could hear and all of these things. We think that those are normal things. I think that, you know, you talked about trauma from past relationships or from past situations and how those can show up in relationships. And it's like, there are, and I believe that healing can also happen in relationship, right? Because usually, you know, not usually, you can do all the work by yourself to heal and so on. Oftentimes the test is when you get in front of somebody else or a similar situation comes up, like what happens then. But what do people do? Because I think we are getting to a point where we realize the things we have done for 50 decades don't really work or mean well for the relationships that we are trying to have now.
But you know, find it interesting that this kind of practice is very common within our people. And I'm not saying that it does not happen for other races.
Yeah.
But you find like it is so common for our own people. It's like, is this something that we really we chose to do, or is something that was instilled in us, or was programmed or projected into us, so that could kind of like create, division between our people and also not help build the community into a better place, because as I said, you are where you grow up. So if the environment is a very harsh environment,
which it is.
As it is, okay, so you would expect people to act a certain way.
Yeah,
people,
and just adapt.
as I say, when in Rome. Okay. So who is going to be the person to create that change, or will be able to say, well, I will not accept this type of behavior, I will not accept this type of mindset or attitude towards me. I deserve better than that. But if men do it now, it's called being sassy. Okay. Right? So
that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. But if we speak and we say something that you do not like, you see it as disrespect. But if you say something and it hurts us, you see it as a form of encouragement or
like you have to be especially aggressive towards men. Like men should not receive gentleness and all of those things.
Yes, and even for your part, I would believe having friendships with women in saying kids. I know I assume that it's been very rough at times.
Yeah, at times.
At times.
But not that they're rough people. Some of them are, but not all of them. Some of them are very different, because it also comes back to, yes, there's the society and what that establishes as norm and as standard and so on. There's also what happens in your home, in your house, and so on. So, as you were talking about who's going to be the one to do differently, or like where does it start, or things like that. I was like, it can start with the children, because that's, and where does it come from, right? It comes from generations of raising people like that. Because I feel like, I don't have the statistics, but I think if I say half or close to half or a little more than half of conditioned children are raised very rough, and so they become adults who are rough and who apply that roughness to their relationships.
And even to the standard of when it comes to dating and relationships, children see those things and emulate those things. So that is why, like, and I will preach this to even men and women, if you have a child and you're not with the mother or the father, I don't think that you should allow anybody else to be around the child. I never practiced those kind of things. As much they might say, oh, he's a gallus and he never this and he that kind of woman. If two women ever say they spoke to my child, that is a lot. And I find that a lot of people don't know how to separate the relationship when it comes to the kids. You can't be bringing in a man here and there every single minute, and a 2-year-old boy seeing that. When he goes up and he hears the type of woman to do these things, he can't respect you. He ain't got no choice but not to respect you. Because, you feel that somebody in your school say, boy, I'm like, how can a man go into your house, boom, boom, boom. You ain't even know who your father be, this and that. Because kids could be very harsh, And that there could play a psychological effect to the child too when it comes to relationship, because if my mother was doing certain things and I see somebody doing the same thing, like patterns, I could only assume the person is that type of person, unless they show me otherwise. But even to that itself will stop a lot of people. And it's so common now, because this is where being a side man is very important. It opens your eyes to a lot of things, and the way how women think and how women deal with situations to get out of it. I done had a time when a lady, she in a relationship, and she came by my house, and her boyfriend called, and the first thing she do, she put on a voice like she was extremely tired, like, oh baby, Yeah, I miss it. So you do me
I
some
don't.
justice.
What's the problem here?
The problem is, as the man, I'm looking at that
The
as
same thing for like a woman or whoever was the person on the other
yeah.
end.
But that's what I understand.
Sorry,
that.
I know you're here for the men's perspective, but
yes,
I'm just like,
but what do you want me
what's
to
the
do?
problem?
The problem is you in a blasted relationship. You should even
Okay,
study
and
the
men have
perspective.
done this for years.
Yes, but I mean,
By the way,
realistic-
not that I'm
Sorry.
supporting, infidelity. That's not
No, we're
what's
not.
happening in this conversation.
no,
We're just
we-
talking
no.
about how people deal with
Ma-
it.
One person only.
If that is what you have agreed to.
Yeah. Okay.
One, if that is the issue.
Okay. Free spirit.
The issue is you say monogamous and I say no. And we ain't talk about that. So
That's
you
it.
don't know what is happening with me and I don't know what is happening. I assume what's happening with you based on what you said. If people want open relationships, people can be in open relationships. If people want to have multiple partners, that's cool once everybody is aware and has agreed. But so long as you have not had the discussion or you discuss it and the person ain't agree, then whatever happens is, cheating. But back to this.
But it's okay, not to even cut off the whoever we're talking about, but even to that itself is common, You go in a relationship and you have to think like, but this person might got next person.
Yeah, I realized that is a thing that happens. Someone told me, it was a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Said, I don't know if I bought to Bashburn or whatever, but she told me that she's been getting hit on a lot by married men, hit on by a lot of married men.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very interesting, and I don't doubt that married women also cheat, but I just had that specific example, which is like, you make whatever commitment to each other and...
But even to that, right, it's still kind of subjective because you're not married, right? Were you still having conversation with me?
But that would the girl had a boyfriend. Were you let her come by you?
Well, let me come by me because I didn't care.
Okay, and then some people don't care, and that's just human nature.
Yes.
That's human nature, and that's why it's only the people in the relationship who have a responsibility or an obligation to each other. I mean, everybody is different. Some people will respond to a taken or married person's advances, and some people will not. But that person outside the relationship ain't making a commitment to your partner. So you made that commitment, so it's your responsibility to honor that commitment or to discuss if you feel like
You need
changing, the...
But it's a very hard conversation.
It is, but it's necessary. And I think that's part of dating, right? Not that's part of dating, but going back to the dating thing, I think necessary conversations are not something that we do in dating. A lot of times when we date, the dating is so interesting here. And I know when I had my guest on, who is a woman, one of the realities of dating as a woman in St. Kitts in particular, and probably elsewhere too, that doesn't have like a dating culture, is when you go out with one person, you start to hear about, she and that person together, and then if you go out with another person, is, I did she out with this person, she invited him, blah blah blah, she going with all these people, all these things. Do men experience
all the
that
time.
fear?
All the time. And I feel like that's something that we can't change. Like I said, that's something that is culturally inclined. That's something you can't change. We don't say we're dating. If you see somebody, well, from then to now, when we were growing up, if you see somebody with one person more than twice, you automatically say they're
together.
They're together. So it's still the same, but it is so common now, like people just being outside with all kind of different people. You just walk out, she get really, and but reality is it might be true, or it might not be true, but it's very small, and that is why it's always good to be observant so you can see who really got something, right? Especially when you go to parties. I find a lot of secret relationships out in parties. You know. I just sit down, I got my drink, and then you see a girl just gone over there, and she whispers something in this man's ear, and the man just start to smile. What are you smiling for, sir?
That's all you needed. That's all you needed to see.
No, but it's just manner, it's just movements. Like, I remember a time I fell with the woman, and the woman went to the bathroom. As soon as the woman went to the bathroom, the next woman come dance on him. Went back to business, get like a 1-2 minute, went back to she business. Nobody saying a thing, nobody watching on to say, well, girl, your man was just dancing. Everybody just walk out, everybody doing the thing, you know. And as an observer, those kind of things will kind of like make I want to dial back a little bit.
Yeah, it's rough out.
It's rough out.
It's rough out, yeah.
You know, 'cause even even if when you're single, sometimes you in the same event or function, or it could be even a social event, and you just feel like this person just
watching you,
and you just like you could feel it. They just
so sometimes you're the one in the relationship finding out about the other relationship in the party.
Okay.
But why? And that seems from conversations. Well, actually, I can't even say much more common because I wasn't there. I wasn't even there 35 years ago, so I can't say. But it seems like that is normal. No. What do you think? Do you think people are afraid of commitment? Do you think commitment just looks different? No, because sometimes people don't know. It's like, yes, your partner is cheating on you. You're aware and you're staying in the relationship. So people are counting that towards acceptance or something like that. It might not be, there could be lots of reasons that you choose to remain in the relationship. But yeah, what do you think? Are people running away from commitment, or is that how we define is that a version of commitment?
I guess it's because the circumstances you probably put yourself into that you don't want to make the commitment. Like, for example, like if somebody who is someone that always having relations with persons who in relationships, you can't just expect them to just say, well, I'm going to settle down. But, they have to take consideration that karma could happen at any given moment. So they rather just live their life that way. But that is a very dangerous game too, because you forget there's a third party involved, and you can't tell the third party how to react. I saw something recently. This guy maybe came home and saw his wife with a man in the moment, right? God forbid, and I thank God every day that ever happened to me. I mean, I believe I would just walk out right now, the kind of mindset I had, but if I was like totally invested in this person and just like obsessed with this person, like I just want to be I just want to be committed to this one person, and I don't believe this and that, and you come home and you see that, the type of rage you will get, especially like the performance. You see your woman doing things that she never do to you. You must go mad. I'm not saying
emotionally, because you should not respond with violence.
You should not respond with
whatever
violence.
the situation is. Just walk away.
But
you could scream, you could spin wrong, you could be like, my heart.
But some people again, so when it comes to gender now, if the woman catch the man now and she does something like that, most of the time it's justified.
No, she should also scream and break down and cry and all of these things. No. Violence is never justified.
No.
I understand there are double standards and people treat it differently, but I also have seen where people try to justify it, and it's never justifiable.
I mean, it's subjective if you look at it.
It's not.
It's subjective.
It's not.
I mean, I'm not saying you don't do it at all. Violence is bad in any circumstance. I wouldn't promote it. I'm just saying that you can't control people's emotions.
But people should control their own emotions.
Exactly.
And in that moment, you learn that that person maybe isn't for you. Maybe y'all ain't on the same page that you thought that you were on. Sometimes people see that and they choose still to be in the relationship. So it's like, you know, you can always choose. You can't choose how you feel in that moment, but you can always choose your actions in those moments and choose how you respond.
That is true. And I would say to anybody, if you ever went through that instance, you know, the best thing to do is just walk away, you know. Just turn, because the more you look at it and the more you process that information, it's only going to get you angry. And it's only going to make you do things that you're going to regret, you know. And it's very unfortunate that some people don't have the time or even the like a form of cognitive thinking to even say, well, you know, I'm not going to do it. You know, it's that there is beyond my control. You know, I will not allow that there to take over my emotions and, you know. But someone says, oh, you go do it in somebody else's house, not in my place. You, not in my place. You understand? You out of order.
Not in the car that I put in gas in.
Not in the car I buy for you.
I hear you.
Okay.
I hear you.
Okay.
I hear you.
So
I hear that part. I accept that part.
Okay.
Somewhere else.
So exactly. So imagine you're in a 5-year relationship with that person. Y'all literally build a life together, build a company, whatever the case is. And this little 90-year-old.
That would have a very specific story.
No, I'm saying no, but oh no, sorry. 19 to 21, you know.
That's also very specific.
Yeah, I mean, I just point in details.
Okay.
I just little details, but you know, this person just come with just all this appeal, all this look, you know, all this busty, you know.
Yeah.
And you just there like, bro, like, you know what time and investment and love and dedication you put towards it. Just let this whole young sprat just come and want to mash up everything. And that's something like we can't really control. That's one thing I learned as I get older, like you can't control people's thoughts or their actions. You can only control how you respond to it. And more times, like, that's why I get so, like, drawn away from even building the relationship, because even simple conversation is just not satisfying. A lot of, watch it, a couple women out here just very boring to talk to, you know.
I don't want to end the show. I don't want to end the show here.
I'm sorry.
We actually
I'm sorry.
out of
Yeah, at the time?
we out of time, and it's like that's not a good note
Okay.
to end it on. But I also find there are lots of boring men, so I think there are boring people
Yeah, they're very
in general, which is why you remember at the start of the show I said I have a feeling that we will report similar experiences.
Okay.
And it's like
Right,
I
yeah.
mean very similar experiences, but also like perceptions of what is happening in dating. And it just seems generally that, you know, we said I think relationships have become very transactional.
Very.
So it's very like as I said, you know, people asking people what you bring to the table. That's what men ask women, and women ask men, but what you could do for me, or however it is you put it. So everybody, a lot of people are focusing on those things, whereas like relationships, like those things you could build together, right? Those things you could work on. Like, what about you as a person? What about your soul? What about your personality? What about who you are and
That-
how you show up with me? Can I help to make you better? Can you help to make me?
I mean that is why you have to pay attention into what the person indulges in terms of, unless that person is like the nature is just like humor and witty and those kind of that thing, you have to really pay attention of what their mind indulge into. So if you keep seeing this woman just talking about, I deserve a trip every now and again, if you ain't got a bag, don't speak to me, those kind of things, like you have to take it into consideration because she had to really process it in her mind, like, but yeah, I mean, really want a man who ain't really got together, who just a little above par, I am the table, I am the prize.
And I think that's okay for anybody to have as, their dating standards or whatever they want to call it. I think people can find the people for them, but I really think that we do need to look at the reality of our situation, especially here. It is very unlikely that you will find somebody who got 20 houses and property, including properties overseas and so on, which is not to say, drop your standard, which is not to say finances aren't important, because they are. But it's also, what else? Beyond that, are you looking for someone who is going to be good to you in general, and are you thinking about who you want to be as a person years down the line and whether or not that person can support that, and the non-tangibles or the non-material things, I think, are being deprioritized for the financial or economic things. Well, we are out of time.
Sadly.
We are out of time. We've been talking about dating. This was from a man's perspective, and everything that would tell was like, okay, not everything. No, but I really, really figured that we would have, similar perspectives, and I think that is a very important thing to note.
Yes.
Because it's like people in the dating pool, one side shouting this, you ain't doing this, and the other side shouting, you ain't doing this, and it's like they ain't realized that both of them, nobody's working for anybody. And it's like, we need something new, we need something different, and how do we get there?
I mean, that's why I say, like, these kind of conversations and forums are very important, because it gives you the chance to actually lay it out as it is, how you see things, and when you're dealing with somebody who has a very clouded mind, it is very hard for them to process certain information as the person who in the relationship. So sometimes you need these kind of gatherings, these kind of events and programs to let people see a clear view of how men, not just men I think, but people think.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I wouldn't know that you find most men nowadays are boring.
And I wouldn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, understand? So
we only know if I'm talking about it. And then that way people in the dating pool can be like, oh, this is how I've been coming off. And you're like, yeah. And then I can adjust my behavior if I want to, Yep, well, thank you all so much for joining us for another episode of Pleasure Pulse. Thank you, Dawood, for joining me in this conversation.
Likewise for, inviting me again. And I definitely want to come back, especially with the next guest.
So we can have a group conversation.
Yeah.
It's going to be the boys against girls.
Boys
no, I just joking.
No, but I feel like I said, this type of forum is good, and it's also needed because transparency is important. It's very important because you can't just assume. And I feel like a lot of people have this kind of like a presumed perception of like how things supposed to be, actually speaking on it and whatever the case may be. For me, I just believe in actions because you could say 1,000 different things, but your actions speak otherwise. A society that we couldn't touch on more and talk about like the traumatic experience. Hopefully we could do that for the next meetup. Yeah, because that there is what kind of like putting a huge dent in relationships. People coming in with a lot of baggage of unresolved issues and whatever form of torment they're going through in their life, and are weighing it on the relationship. We're gonna do that another time. We ain't got no more time now.
Thank you again for joining us for another conversation, another episode of Pleasure Pulse. As usual, I'll wish you a pleasurable evening, and I will see you all next time.
Yes,
Bye.